So I remember talking to you about the book that I was talking about, The Art of Loving, and in that book you mentioned about the different stages of loving. So
Yeah.
first, what we mentioned is the brotherly love, the love you feel for the fellow human being, and then you've got the romantic love, the love you feel for another special person, and then you got the familial love for your mother, and that kind of relationship. I want to focus today more on the romantic love,
Okay.
the love and the relationships that form from that, and how maybe as a society we hold preconceived notions about this, but it's kind of a thing where it develops as you get older and older. I think a lot of our generation haven't had the conversation with themselves. It's almost like we're all just trial and error, throwing out what sticks in the wall and then continuing. But we've not had a conversation with ourselves about what it means to get into a relationship, what it means to understand it. I think some of the dialogue around it, that comes out from it is maybe like, when people talk about the attachment styles. But I think that's a surface level conversation. But we should have more of a conversations about what the art of loving means, the art of romantic love means, and all of that. So the question I have for you is that just focusing specifically on romantic love. What is romantic love to you? How do you conceive of it? And how has your perception of that idea changed as you've grown older?
Okay. I grew up obviously in I suppose, stereotypical like 2000s British household, right? Like my parents were married. I'm one of 4 kids. Like my mum was Irish. It's very like Roman Catholic sort of vibe. And I think that fundamentally has probably made up a lot of the groundwork of what I consider love in a relationship context to be. Because like I think your parents are typically the first example you're provided with. If you're lucky, it's a good one. And what I observed in my parents was 2 people who essentially functioned as one working unit. Like, they both worked a lot, but also the responsibilities were divided fairly equally. Like, even if not immediately down the line, they would equate out. Like, that to me, I think makes up the basis of what forms, I suppose, a successful romantic relationship, in that sense at least, right? And I think that feeds into love as well, because you would not support somebody like that. You wouldn't share a life with a person, because you only really get the one shot. Who you choose to spend that life with really matters, if you choose to spend it with anybody. Or, I suppose if you want to put the flip side on that, if you're fortunate enough to find somebody worth spending it with. We like to turn things into like a very, I suppose, economic model now of looking at relationships. It's almost like a sunk cost fallacy for a lot of people. Just in the sense of like, how much am I logically going to invest in this project before it craps out? Which is certainly a way to look at it. It's a bit cynical, I think, to look at it like that. But people are an investment, and it's important to choose your investments wisely. But I think when people say you can't help who you fall for, there is some truth in that. There is. I think that follows from the logic of like the virtuous love as well, where like perhaps falling for somebody you shouldn't means trying to give too much of yourself in a virtuous sense, like propping up that person. Would I say that that's necessarily a basis for romantic love? I think that there is an element of truth to it, certainly. But I also think that fundamentally from the ground up, that is deeply, deeply flawed. Because I don't know if I could necessarily say I could put a definite description on what romantic love truly is, because it's a feeling. Like it's a very ephemeral concept. I would say that like there are certainly people that you have a very natural inclination towards, personality-wise, whatever you want to call it. You could even make the argument that it goes deeper than that. It's almost like this, kinship that you feel with somebody, that like affinity that you see. In some cases, what you think is affinity is not. But also, generally speaking, you are typically on the right track. If you find somebody where you have that, that just immediate connection with, that's like, it's just this unspoken feeling of like, I've known you my whole life, but I met you 2 seconds ago. Those are special feelings. I think that you could argue is also love romantically in itself, or it can become such a thing. I think those are the people that you're more likely to find what we refer to as true love in. You know, it's those people where you just meet them or you see them. Typically, I would say you have to have a conversation to affirm that. But, you know, usually it's because that conversation instantly feeds into it and you're like, oh, yeah, wow, like this person, you know, what, like they're living in my head rent-free for forever now, it seems. Why is that? It's because of that affinity that I was talking about. There are degrees to which that affinity is actually there, but at the same time, if that affinity isn't like, the hope is that you find something that's like your exact affinity, right? You know, it's almost like, oh wow, I found myself. It's like the doppelganger concept.
The Spider-Man meme.
Yeah, exactly. Literally exactly the Spider-Man meme. But that's not to say like you've met somebody who's exactly the same person as you. I wouldn't say that at all. I would say more like, again, it's that affinity thing, right? Like your aspect and their aspect, personality-wise, like disregarding, you know, the base level of attraction, because obviously that has to be there to get here. Those aspects that you discover about that person that just so naturally fit together with yours. It's like puzzle pieces just coming together to create an image. But rather than being so wrapped up in that one focal point that you might be seeing, you actually have the distance to take a step back and see the picture forming itself and realize that this picture that you're seeing come together was the same picture you've been putting together your whole life. It's just that now somebody else is also putting their picture on top of yours and they fit perfectly naturally over each other.
That's a fascinating point, actually. So to go deeper in that then, you mentioned the picture you've been putting together yourself your whole life.
Yeah.
What is the relationship between self-knowledge and romantic love, and how do you understand when to give up that search for self and allow someone else to come into your life and then develop that together?
I think that search for self never ends. I think that it's like if you want to put, like, I suppose, an easy mental image on it, it's like, imagine you're sitting there in like a Freudian style psychoanalysis room where, you know, you yourself are sitting on the couch, like chilling, you know, putting your thoughts out there. And also you yourself, your inner self, is sitting there going like, okay, well, I mean, I think that maybe this happened and I think maybe these things link to these things. And you have to have that conversation with yourself repeatedly. It's a constant checking in process. Some of us more than others maybe, but you know, a lot of us never even go in the room either, which is baffling. But you're never going to find the answers to yourself in another person. That's quite literally impossible. You are the master of your own ship and they have their own ship. Stop trying to board somebody else's ship. Like, the point is that you're meant to sail together. In that sense, you really have to know yourself. I think this ties back into like self-actualization, I suppose, the thing that I can't seem to shut up about.
What do you mean by self-actualization, before you go on that point, and then carry on?
So, okay, self-actualization, I would say probably the easiest image. It's a psychological principle, but it's also bizarrely something that Buddhism has been talking about for thousands of years. Like, those Buddhists, man, they really knew what was up, it seems. Basically, it's like we all have this envisioned self. Literally all of us do. You can't lie to yourself and say you don't. It's the ability to say, I want to be that kind of guy. I want to do that kind of thing. Those are goals. Those are goals that you have not met. Therefore, you have not self-actualized. They might be the thing that you think provides self-actualization, but usually they're just a vehicle to start progressing further and further and further. But you can't see that far until you get there. In that sense, you have your actual self and your ideal self. And somewhere in between is self-actualization. It's where, I suppose it goes back into that whole natural affinity thing. It's like, there are some things you clearly just have a natural affinity for. And your job as a person, in my mind, with your life, is to discover what those things might be. You can't do them all, probably. But, you know, the things that you can do, bro, do them. You owe it to yourself, if you can. But, you know, for me, I suppose it's writing, for you it's poetry, and I guess this too. These are things that you're all incredibly natural, like you have a clear natural affinity towards, just based on who you are as a person. And you're completely in like concordance with that. You're moving in the direction that the stream of your life is flowing, because that's the direction it's meant to go. And you're not trying to resist that. You're not holding on to other things. that is essentially what self-actualization is just simply moving in the direction that your natural affinity seems to go towards. Typically, our natural affinity is this idealized self that we have, or we construct ourselves in such a way that we move towards that natural affinity. How the river flows and the direction it moves is actually your choice, but the river is flowing.
Then on that point then, can you only recognize the affinity that you have with someone else if you are actually on that river of your own life?
100%, yeah.
Only moving towards, and so if you move away from that self-actualization journey, it becomes harder, and you may make a mistake in thinking you have affinity with someone when actually you're just looking for something that you like in yourself.
Yeah.
Speak to me more about that then, about how on the road to self-actualization, if you stay on that road, you're more likely to find this person. That's where the idea of being someone you have that kind of click is immediately, is because you found kind of peace within yourself, and so it's easier for you to look out on that. What's that been like for you, and how does that relate to romantic love?
Well, do you remember, my God, we met like 4 years ago now, Jesus. When we were in our masters, I've also spoken about it probably a lot here as well, but like,
we speak a lot.
We do. We speak a lot, and we speak about a lot. But like, just when I was in my masters, like I had this real feeling of like, I suppose peace is the word I would call it. Like, but obviously so much stuff was going on. Like, my life was anything but peaceful, but I had a lot of tranquility within it, for a brief period at least. I think that was because I was truly self-actualizing in those moments. Like, I had spent a very, very long time alone trying to just figure myself out and really get to grips with who I was as a person. And I think that fundamentally allowed me to find peace with myself, just in the sense of like, I was no longer in resistance to the course of my life. I decided instead to just embrace it, and funnily enough, everything got way easier, and I started meeting really good people like you. And I think that's because I was moving very naturally towards the affinity and the inclination that my life was naturally taking. I used to live in such denial over like a lot of the things I wanted from my life, I suppose dream-wise. But really that was a lack of faith in myself, and eventually I had to confront that too. And here I am now, and I feel like I've really embraced that aspect of myself because, well, I mean, Jesus, it's my PhD, so can't really get more serious than that. Like, I've really hedged my bets there, but equally, that has also allowed me, I suppose, to turn that outwards instead, because that's really what it is. It's like you take the internal and then you begin to look for it in the external. Those natural affinities we have, like the brotherly love. I think that kind of natural affinity that we had towards each other, it's like we just locked eyes and we're like, brother. Why is that? It's because we were both moving in a direction that was naturally towards our affinities. Equally, that applies with meeting romantic partners too. If you have love for yourself and you're able to then turn it and direct it outwards towards existence as a whole, you find that it does have specific homes, and those homes are usually in the faces of people. But it's encountering the right face, I suppose, that a lot of people seem to have trouble with. Like, so I say this as if it's really incredibly simple. It's not. It's really not.
On that point too, about how not simple it is, we've talked about the feeling of love, that initial affinity that you have with someone.
Yeah.
What is the skill involved in love, and what's the skill? Because obviously, I think some people would say that love is not just a feeling, but it's also a skill that you have to learn. Is there a contradiction in that? How do you balance that contradiction in yourself?